Marc is an old-timer at LeWeb. With, What? You've been to 5 LeWebs, right?
Yes, oui, monsieur.
And so this is your panel. Welcome, everyone. I'll let you welcome them.
Julio. Yo, I am the DJ. I want to turn that off, please. No music. Cut the music. All right. Yo, I am the DJ. I want to sing the song. Okay, no, sorry. No, spread out a little bit more. Dave, move a little bit down. It's too crowded here. So this is the bigger couch, so we need one. Sam, Max, move over. Max, move over. Okay. All right, this is the crowded panel. So my name is Marc. We'll all introduce ourselves, and we're here to talk about how large platforms can all interact together, and that perhaps the notion would be that they would set aside their own agendas, or agendai, for the purposes of presenting great things for users. And that by us all cooperating and working together, we can create better experiences for the users. Okay, that's the God. The God is the user. So can we turn this on, the slide thing here? All right, can we get that? Is that up? Okay, great. All right, so first we've got Dave Glazer of Google. And Dave, tell us who you are, what your role is at Google.
I'm Dave Glazer. I'm a director of engineering at Google, and I work in our apps group. And for the last year and a half, I've been working on our social products, which includes Google Friend Connect and our contributions to the open social community and some of our internal social efforts also.
Are you on the Open Social Foundation?
I am. I'm one of the board. I'm Google's representative to the board of the Open Social Foundation.
All right, so we'll be talking about something called Open Social. David.
I'm David Recordon. I work for SixApart out of our San Francisco office.
A little closer. Talk closer.
And work for our co-founder and CTO, and really focus to play around with APIs and open source and how our services interact with the rest of the web, with social networks, all sorts of stuff like that.
But David, weren't you also involved with something called OpenID?
Yeah, I've been involved in sort of helping to create OpenID over the past few years, and then also serve on the board of the OpenID Foundation.
All right, so we'll be talking about OpenID as another technology. Mr. Marin, we're going to go the order of the slides. See, look at the slides here. See, hold on.
I've been slighted.
Okay. Go ahead. All right, read the slides. Okay, go. Dave.
My name is Dave Morin from Facebook, Senior Platform Manager. I've been working on Facebook Platform since we launched it, and most recently working on Facebook Connect.
All right, and Dave used to work at Apple, and you left Apple to go to Facebook because Apple wouldn't let you do the community stuff, right? Right, okay. Now we're going to go in order. Now I apologize that the other two people aren't named Dave. We'll try next year to have only Daves, okay? All right, so Jeff, go.
Jeff Hansen from Microsoft. So I work for Ray Ozzie, our chief software architect. So I work with him kind of from a business strategy, product management role. So I help him land our services strategy across the company and external outreach. And then I also work with some of the product development work that happens on Ray's team, namely live services and our new live mesh offering.
Now, has everyone here heard of a company called Microsoft? Okay, yeah, I think in Europe they have them. And perhaps you've heard of Google as well. But nowadays, it's not just about Google and Microsoft. We got Facebook, and we also have this thing called MySpace, okay? So now we have Max Engel from MySpace.
I'm Max Engel from MySpace. I'm the product lead for MySpace ID and all of our off-site development efforts, so OpenID, OAuth, our REST APIs, and anything involving getting MySpace information.
Talk closer.
MySpace information out of or into our site.
All right, coolio. So I know France is the style capital, the trends, the latest, hottest things. I'm wearing my blue today to represent, you know, the EU and Sarkozy and the great continent of Europe. But we also have to stay on top of the latest, greatest trends, okay? And that is open is the new black. All right? To be open, to be able to share your data, to allow your users to move things around, that's what it's about, okay? This is very important stuff. So this all leads to the notion of an open stack. There are many different pieces of the puzzle. It's a very complicated story. So what we're going to try to do here, the people in the panel, each of these companies have their own interpretation of the open stack. Each of these companies have their own implementation, the way they see open. All right? So we're all going to talk about the word open and how we interpret open. And I want to start with Facebook because a lot of this can be given credit to Facebook because about 18 months ago, Facebook decided to open up their platform so that developers could come in and use what we call the social graph and use all the aspects of Facebook to create this incredible environment, this incredible experience. And we saw an avalanche, an explosion of interest, and Pandora's box was opened. Okay? So let's start off with Dave. Now, Dave, when you see the open stack, where do you see you guys participating and being open, whereas, as opposed to, well, we have our own version of open?
Sure. So like Marc said, about 18 months ago, we decided to open up Facebook platform and open up Facebook and the social graph, which we have built out to now 130 million users to developers worldwide. And really the goal was to enable any developer to get deep integration into Facebook using a set of tools that we built. Some of them are similar to the tools in the OpenStack, some are different. But the ultimate goal was to open up the data that our users have built up inside, that identity data, the friend data, and the social graph, and then all the other data that people are sort of creating and sharing across Facebook. And the idea was that if we open up that data and make it available to developers, we would see vast growth, and developers would see an entirely new opportunity. And we're happy to say that in the last 18 months, we've grown from basically no developers to over 650,000 developers in 180 countries on Earth. And I'm happy to report that we're also now doing close to 14.5 billion page views on Facebook platform alone every single month, which is 5x larger than all the others combined.
So that's an interesting point. We were discussing this last night, that in fact, the way that Facebook deals with their developers has changed recently. That originally the apps were all over the pages, in your face, and you're constantly getting these invitations all the time. And that was really a hassle for me. I didn't necessarily like that. Now, you've recently redesigned your profile page to kind of push the apps back. And could you discuss that decision you made?
Sure. So it wasn't necessarily about pushing apps back. It was actually about changing the integration points a little bit, just changing the way the system actually functions. So when we first opened up platform, we had several different integration points, one of the most important of which was called the profile box. It was kind of like a widget on the profile and something that developers are really into for self-expression and those types of applications. On Facebook, we actually have a technology called Newsfeed, which enables users to sort of share information in a stream format, which has really, really become popular and really enabled developers to get a lot of distribution. And it's a sort of a way that users can display their most recent actions, their friends can keep up with what they're doing on a daily basis. And so what we tried to do was enable a whole new set of integration points inside of Feed and redesign our profile a little bit so that there's more focus on Feed, more focus on the recent interactions that users are having with, that they're both doing to share with their friends and between each other, so that users could, both engage with each other and the applications that our developers are using. And what we've found is that, many of our developers who have switched over to this new format are seeing vastly increased engagement. Okay,
but Dave, and you know I love you, right? Okay, but when I look at the OpenStack, I don't see Facebook anywhere. I mean, you don't necessarily support any of those standards, right?
Not yet.
Okay. And so I know as a developer, and a lot of my customers have asked, that feed that you're talking about and all that stuff that's really a lot of the value of Facebook, well, that's the epitome of your locked-in strategy. And then I would love to get out of Facebook pings that say, what I'm doing in Facebook, I want to display that in Friend Feed or People Aggregator or elsewhere. So would you ever see us being able to get that feed out?
Absolutely. We look at it that ultimately over time, we want to open up as much as possible. And that's definitely our strategy, and we talk about that a lot. You'll see Mark Zuckerberg, our CEO, on stage a lot talking about the fact that, we really are ultimately at Facebook trying to make the world a more open and connected place. And so we see it that over time, we'll just continue to open things as we can.
Okay. Well, from a strategy side, though, I mean, Amit from MySpace yesterday sort of brought up the example of how in the past you've had open platforms and closed platforms, and the open platforms are the ones that have been more successful. And so the part that would worry me if I were in Facebook's shoes is that we're getting to this point where whether it's Google or SixApart or MySpace or Microsoft, we're all building on top of these same technologies, which means that a developer, even if right now Facebook is the shiny place to go and integrate their website and get access to friends and social data, if all of a sudden that developer's code will work across Microsoft and MySpace and Google and lots of other applications and social networks as well, at some point Facebook is going to become the underdog again.
Right, and that's why I wanted Facebook to go first, because the other four, I think, are more closely aligned. And Facebook, though they are being the innovator and pushing the envelope, the way it currently exists, it's actually a pretty closed world. But we love you anyway, okay? All right, now, so let's swing from the platform that doesn't support any of the layers of the OpenStack to one of the guys who invented it. So, Mr. Recordon, please tell us about where you fit in, both your company, SixApart, and as a representative of the OpenID Foundation, how you see this OpenStack laid out.
So I think the OpenStack as it's being framed right now is still very much a collection of different technologies. And what you're seeing happen with companies like Facebook is going and building sort of much more towards a vision and towards a solution. And that's where you're seeing the stack come together, is that you have technologies like OpenID to provide distributed and decentralized identity. You have a technology called XRDS to try to do service discovery. So if I sign into your website, you can find out where I store my photos. OAuth being able to go and allow me to grant you access to upload photos. Portable contacts to access my friends. Open Social to run Facebook-style platform applications on a bunch of different social networks. And so what I'm really seeing is going from 3.5 years ago, where none of these technologies existed and OpenID was just coming about, to right now where they're starting to be a stack of just technologies, to really evolving by the combined work of a bunch of different companies into more of a solution.
Right, so this is the challenge that the OpenID community has. They were this wonderful standard, but they're only a piece of the stack. And what I'll predict, we'll be here a year from now, and OpenID will have evolved to a solution brand, that it's not necessarily a piece of the stack, but it represents a brand that marketeers and other vendors can grok, okay? Now, Max, you guys announced yesterday some new stuff that involves this OpenStack, right?
Definitely, and I think for us, when we were looking at the open identity space and how do we empower MySpace users to travel around the web, we felt strongly not only that we were creating a solution that provided flexibility, but also doing it in a way that was embracing where we thought the web was going. And we very strongly believe that what we're building by using these open standards is helping push the web forward. And that the internet as an entity, when it hits a roadblock, it goes around it. And what we want to do is work with the flow of where we think the web is going. And so when we were looking at our technology choices, we'd been partnering with Google and Yahoo and the other Open Social Foundation. We were using OAuth and OpenID as a natural extension of MySpace. We're in a very unique position in that OpenID is a single sign-on solution based on the idea of representing your identity as a URL. And MySpace users, over 90% of our users have these vanity URLs on MySpace. So our users think of themselves as myspace.com/ and whatever their custom URL is. And so that gives us a great position to help move this effort and community forward. And so with MySpace ID and what we're doing, we're really getting behind these open standards and rolling a solution that's embracing that. And similarly, when we're looking at things like you were saying, we announced we're going to allow for MySpace activities to be exported and taken into sites like FriendFeed, doing it in a standards-based way.
So you guys basically, you implement everything on that chart, right?
Yeah, we have everything. And I think what's great is with the efforts we've undertaken, things work. Things work out of the box. It's very quick. Development is rapid. I mean, when we were at the Portable Contacts meetup, we were able to get that going because Portable Contacts has been aligned with Open Social. And it just works. And I think, again, talking about what we announced yesterday, with working with Google on Friend Connect, it was just an incredibly elegant development process. And getting this all working was simple because OpenID, OAuth, and Open Social are in both of our company's DNAs.
OK, so I know one of the confusion points that many people have is what is the difference between OpenID and Open Social? So Dave Glazer, could you please, sorry Max, you'll get your turn, okay. But Dave, please explain to us, what's the difference between OpenID and Open Social?
They're solving two different parts of the puzzle. You need both in order to do the full solution of letting the goal here is let users do whatever they want to with other people wherever they are on the web. So you want to be able to run any interesting app on any site on the web with any of the people you care about. That's the goal. So to do that, there's a bunch of things that have to be true. One is you have to be able to log in. So if I go to a new site and I have to log in and I want to log in, I shouldn't have to create a new account from scratch at every site. That's the piece, that's the problem that OpenID goes after, is say, once I've created credentials, let me use them in as many places as I want. And of course, since I can create as many different sets of credentials as I want, I could still have a separate login per site or one login I use everywhere. That's OpenID. OpenSocial is solving a different piece of the puzzle. OpenSocial, and actually with OpenSocial today, there are two sets of APIs in OpenSocial. There are the original client-side APIs that allow people to do what Facebook platform did originally, which is allow third-party developers to write applications that run inside any different social context. So, if MySpace wanted to allow third-party developers to write an app that ran inside MySpace, they could say, oh, well, we are compatible with the OpenSocial container, so you just plug any app that complies to those APIs in, and it'll run. You run that app inside MySpace, it runs with the MySpace social context. You run that same app inside Plaxo Pulse, it would run with the Plaxo Pulse social context. You run it inside SixApart, it would run with the SixApart social context.
So OpenSocial is very much a solution wrapper. It does a whole thing?
Well, OpenSocial is, I think all of these are parts of a solution. I think that that first part of OpenSocial is, it's allowing the piece of it, which is app assembly, running an app inside somewhere else. The other piece of OpenSocial, which are the server-side protocols, the OpenSocial REST and RPC protocols, what those allow you to do is allow anyone building an application that runs on their server, runs on a mobile device, runs wherever, to have a standard way to talk to any social provider and say, hey, if I want to find out who my MySpace friends are, I will make a call to MySpace using the OpenSocial wire protocols.
And I think that's the piece that's probably being underestimated right now, where so much attention was put into being able to go and write applications which run inside of social networks. But in some cases, I sort of see that as only like one stop or like a bit of a detour on the path where the web is going. We're going to get to the point, and you see this in Facebook Connect, very much the vision there, and what I think you'll see more and more through things like the OpenSocial REST API or what MySpace is doing of combining these technologies into a solution, is that it will actually be far larger the number of sites that don't exist within a social network, that take advantage of identity from social networks, activity sharing, profile information, all of those sorts of things. The web wasn't designed to be such a way that everything runs inside of a few large silos. It's designed to be run in a way that's distributed and decentralized, where services talk to one another.
The analogy to the web itself that David made is exactly right? It's like today when I want to find a piece of content, I don't go to the content site of the web to find my content. There are millions of sites, all independently controlled, and I don't have to worry about which content is on which site because HTML and HTTP work.
Okay, so we've heard the epitome of the, excuse the expression, closed platform, which actually did the innovation that got us here. And now we've seen this open stack, which is a consortium of standards. But let's not forget that if we don't have Microsoft, we don't have the PC industry. And what Microsoft has announced is something called Live Mesh. And that's not incorporated in this stack. The idea that all your stuff all over the place has to be synchronized. That if in my car, or the living room, or my game machine, or my TV, that's all part of my digital life as well. You see? And so by having this other component that Microsoft's bringing to the table, the notion of meshing things together, of interconnecting and synchronizing things together, this is a key part of our future. So it's very, very important for us to understand, how is Microsoft going to connect into this open stack? I mean, I love Microsoft, but I don't really care about Microsoft unless I can interconnect with you. I mean, we love the fact that you've got all this great stuff, but what good does that do for us? So, Jeff, you've had some time to think about this. Where do you see Microsoft connecting into the open stack?
Yeah, so let me address two things. So you're absolutely right with our effort with Mesh. It's absolutely about that symmetrical sync. And, hey, if I establish a relationship with you, you give me rights, we can interact, et cetera, and that happens at a personal level as well as applications, et cetera, and that's extremely important in this open world. In terms of the open stack, so we're at varying degrees depending on the layer. So a few weeks ago, we announced support for OpenID. We've actually, I would say, been a leader in the OAuth area with our delegated auth offering, absolutely paying attention to what they're doing. And I think when you see that they're at feature parity, we'll move in that direction. We're participating in the portable contacts. There's
in
many.
fact, why don't we pause on that for a second? Do you want to explain that, or should I have Dave?
On portable contacts?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with portable contacts, so absolutely we're aligned with the data. The user's data is the user's data, being able to move it across. The specs, quite honestly, are pretty early, but we're participating in that, adding our voice and making sure that the balance of kind of convenience and security is there.
So I show up at a Microsoft site, I can pull the profile data, the friends list out of a Microsoft site, put it into my site. I can make some changes. I can put it back into the Microsoft site. Microsoft has implemented two-way APIs. The ability to create a symmetrical level playing field here so you can move data in and out of Microsoft. This is something people don't even realize they've had for, in fact, over a year for their contacts, and now they've been helping us support and implement this new standard we call portable contacts.
That's right. So we have our contacts API. Actually, we were doing some things with portable contacts in our live framework tech preview, and so if you stop by our booth, you can learn more about that. And then various aspects of open social we're absolutely aligned with. We're still kind of evaluating the gadget container, what we do there. So if you step back, how I think about the whole open social stack, the principles behind that, right? Making sure that any developer, whatever language and even non-proprietary standards they like to work with, they can participate. We're all aligned with that. I think a lot of people were surprised at our professional developers conference in October. We had the engineers do sessions entirely in non-proprietary, non-Microsoft technology. So
what he's saying here is that you as a PHP developer
absolutely
can be working in the Microsoft environment. Also, Microsoft has a deal with Novell, and they've been working on open source stuff. So this isn't your grandfather's Microsoft. Right? This isn't the Microsoft that the EU sued multiple times and fined, right? This is the new Microsoft. Now, they're all around. They've got this new idol. You want to talk a little about the guy you work for?
Ray?
Yeah.
Yeah, Daniel talked a little bit about him yesterday, too. Yeah, great guy. So I've been at Microsoft for a while, and you know, it's just been fantastic to see Ray come in.
But you can see a culture shift, right? You can see like the old school Microsoft, and like there's this whole new kind of like rebels, very much like how the Mac group was back in Apple in the old days, right?
Yeah, we have a great team.
And you hang a pirate flag, or no?
No, there's a mix of old school and new school in our building, so we don't.
Because you still like that $16 billion a year from Office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I thought so. All right. So anything else more about the stack?
Well, one thing I'll say with you talked about mesh and the sync part. On the gadget or app piece of the equation, there is a whole nother set of challenges and opportunities that we haven't really talked about here. So for example, we think about the two app patterns that exist today. I have a web app. I want to take that offline. Hey, that's great, and there's some solutions out there for taking offline. But then you create a whole set of other issues for the developer, like how do you deal with the synchronization going from online to offline, et cetera. And so that's part of what we're doing with Mesh.
Right.
And then the flip of that, the rich clients, right? If I have two deployments of a rich application, today they have no way of sharing data. And so, again, with Mesh, the data synchronization
All right,
there.
so now this is a question that my friend Steve Gilmore would ask. So I'll ask this. This is my Steve Gilmore proxy. So you got this live Mesh thing, right?
Yep.
And it's Groove 4.0. It's the evolution of what Ray's been working on. But we were talking about OpenStack. We're afraid of Facebook trying to lock us in, and we're thinking, well, Microsoft's trying to think they're smarter than we are, and they think we're going to take our balls and lock it into the live mesh, right? So, do you imagine an open source version or open APIs to live mesh so that SixApart could implement a live mesh, or some other company, Oracle, or in other words, as long as it's a single source and you're the only vendor that does live mesh, I'm not going to trust you. And I love you, but I'm not going to trust you. And so that's the epitome, and this is what we got going with Twitter right now. We're putting all our balls into Evan Williams' vice. And so thus was born something called Identica, which allows us to have a distributed world. We're looking for a distributed universe here. So though I appreciate that live mesh is so elegant, do you see a model where we could have external versions of live mesh that are run by somebody else other than Microsoft?
Yeah, so two ways to address that. So in terms of participating in live mesh, absolutely we have that open. You can kind of think of it as a translation layer. So whatever language is your preference, you know, we have the RESTful layer. You can, if you're plain old XML guy, et cetera, you can participate.
You're just saying different ways to plug my balls into your vice. I mean, you know, it's like, I appreciate that, but it's still a vice.
Okay. And then on the portability of mesh, we're not there yet, but absolutely the team has kind of thought through from day one. We know there's lots of instances.
Let's talk about an Apache version of it, an open source implementation of it.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but we're
trying to get it out of you.
Yeah, you're nudging me along.
So Max, what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, so I was just going to say, at least speaking for those on this couch, that what we're doing is we're working on these open standards, and we're not locking you in. And we so strongly believe in the services we're building on top of it, that just because we're using OpenID, OAuth, OpenSocial, anyone can use OpenID, OAuth, and OpenSocial. It's a level playing field. It's a level playing field. We believe that really it's up to the social network, the identity provider, to provide what's best for their users, but then for the development community, making sure they have the flexibility to know that their work is extensible. And I think that's really important. These are open specifications. Anyone can build against it. And you know, I think when you embrace that philosophy of openness, it's better for the web.
Okay, so Dave, I got a zinger here. Okay, so Mr. Glazer. So here's, you know, the saying goes that whatever is good for the open web is good for Google, right? Google wants there to be an open web because as long as there's an open web, Google prospers, right? Because the reality is that each of these companies up here do have their own agenda, right? And, you know, it's not to say you shouldn't, but the theory here of that slide is that the users are really important, and we have to kind of almost not set aside our own agenda, but always keep the users in mind. Now, I have my own request. This is another Steve Gilmore request, okay? He helped lock me into Gmail, okay? I'm a Gmail addict now, all right? And I'm thinking about my knowledge base and all the things I want to develop as I move forward. But each of those little Gmail addresses, right? I mean, you're Google, right? You're the web, right? Well, each of those little Gmail messages, I can't get a URL for it, right? I mean, it's all locked in within the Gmail data silo, right? So I would like to make a request to get individual URLs for each of those messages so we can really say that Google's open. Because right now, Google's open as long as it helps Google. But where you don't want to be open, all of a sudden, well, you're not open, right? And so you're kind of choosing the rules and setting the rules. I'm not saying you can't, but I get to bitch about it.
Yeah, so, you know, Gmail is not one I work on directly, but every message in Gmail does have a URL because that's how Gmail navigation works. Now, it's not a public URL. It only works for you.
Free the URLs. Free the Gmail.
Marc, do you want all of your email public? I mean, is that what you're asking for?
Dude, it's called access privileges. Talk to Mr. Marin about controlling access. That's fine to have control over the access. I just want to be able to build as a developer. I want to build add-on things to Gmail. And right now, it's the Gmail labs are the only guys that get to do that.
Well, a little better than that. If you look at one of the new Gmail labs is the ability to run gadgets inside Gmail. And, you know, about 3 days after we turned that on, we saw Remember the Milk come out and ship a Remember the Milk plugin. And got a bunch of people using it. And it was, you know, we weren't expecting that, but we were very happy to see that. And, you know, so there's motion in that direction. Right. One just point, it's a little bit of an aside, but your point about Gmail and whether you'd want everyone to see your Gmail. Sometimes it's important when you're thinking about the different worlds of information out there, we sometimes say there's 3 classes of information: public, private, and complicated. And you know, the public information is obviously where Google first started. We first started by saying, let's take all the public information in the world and make it accessible, useful, aggregate them into an index, all of that. And then the private information with things like Gmail is another step. But then if you look at some of the things going on with Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, with Picasa, you know, that's a much slower process. And all of the social data we're talking about is in that complicated area, where it's very important to get the user models correct, the privacy models, the trust models. The standards like OpenID and OAuth are implementations that allow that. But much more important is making sure users are never surprised by who can see what or do what with their information.
And that's a great segue to passing the baton to Mr. Dave Marin, because when they developed Facebook Connect, the problem was that Facebook got to where they were because they gave a level of privacy that wasn't on Friendster or MySpace, right? That was what made Facebook what it was. You had to use your real name. You would limit your access. You wouldn't get bombarded by all the spam. And so one of the big concerns that Facebook had with Facebook Connect was maintaining the privacy controls over your data. So now, Dave, again, we love Facebook in the closed world. Can you ever see a model where that privacy controls could go out around the open web?
Sure. So when we first started Facebook, we took a hard look at openness in the world and said, in order to truly achieve more openness and to give people the power to share and to share the information that actually enables deeper connections between people and enables people to connect in ways that had never been possible before, we knew that we had to provide a privacy model that had basically never existed on the internet. And that privacy model had to protect the user and give the user control over what information they shared, being able to share their real name, their real profile picture, and all this other information. And that's something that's been very important to us. And to us, a very important part of openness is providing users with the ability to control their information, to set privacy settings, to have bidirectional graph relationships between two people that define who can see what, and to really enable people to have a social context wherever they go with the right people, and not just any people or people that you don't know, but your real actual friends who you interact with every single day.
Now, Jeff, does Live Mesh and Microsoft have those same kind of access controls?
Yeah, and I was going to make an additional point about the user perspective. So these open standards, this is a great step forward in the right direction, but mainly from the developer perspective, right? We can share data across our social networks and our applications. We need to be clear, we're a long way from the solution that users need, right? This combination of abundance of convenience and security. And so I just caution us a little bit, like with some of these Connect systems, for the most part, you're just loaning the user their data for a set period of time. They don't have the full, it's my data, available anywhere I want it, when I want it, on a continual basis. And so just caution us a little bit that we have a long way to
Sure. So, to finish answering the question, actually, when we looked at creating Facebook Connect, we looked at this privacy model, and we looked at the fact that the web is not just about information, it's about people. And it's about enabling these people who, on Facebook have been able to control their information in this very robust way and shared more information than ever before. And so we knew that in order to create a system where developers can access that data and users can take it with them, we actually had to create a dynamic privacy model which enabled people to, when they log into another website using Facebook Connect, actually be able to take those privacy settings that they're used to having on Facebook and take them with them wherever they go. So with the Facebook Connect technology, you can actually expect that profile picture that you change on Facebook, that those relationships that you modify and change every single day between you and your friends will always be up to date, not just on Facebook and the applications that they're used to using on Facebook, but any Facebook Connect site that they use. So for example, on TechCrunch or any of our Facebook Connect partners who have implemented this technology, you can expect if you make a comment with your real identity that your profile picture and your real name will only be represented the way in which you have set it up to be controlled.
Okay, and so dudes on the other couch.
A little bit of shenanigans, man. I mean, I think what you guys are doing is very innovative and new, and being able to go and take privacy from Facebook to other sites on the web. But to say that Facebook invented this model of being able to have all sorts of privacy controls, I mean, LiveJournal had this back in 1999. My other question there is...
Sure, but did LiveJournal users use their real name?
A lot of them did, yeah.
Not all of them. That's the point. They required Facebook. So when Zuckerberg went to leave that comment on Arrington, we knew it was Zuckerberg.
Right, but I mean,
we have 130 million users with real names and real photos.
I understand that, but I mean, a lot of people on LiveJournal shared information that was far more personal with their friends than their real name. So, but my other question is, you talk about this ability to give users control over all of their profile information, but then why are you going and giving Microsoft access to all of users' email addresses? Like, I never gave you permission to give Microsoft access to email addresses.
So if any of you have an extra 250 million, you can get access to the Facebook APIs, right? So none of the rest of us can, but Microsoft does. So
yeah, to be clear, we don't get the email addresses.
They're saying that they don't keep them, David.
So then Michael Arrington's wrong in his interview with Mark Zuckerberg last week?
They're saying they don't keep them.
I think he's got some.
Now, Mr. Glazer.
Wait, hold on.
Since, okay, Max, you're next in the queue. Okay, all right. Now, Mr. Glazer, So I, as a not one of these guys, perceive that what he's saying, the notion of dynamic privacy, is important. And when I look at the OpenStack and I look at OpenSocial, I don't see anything like that. How do these access controls, even if they're not as as extreme as Facebook, how can I perpetuate access controls across the OpenStack?
So I think it's important
and where
to
do they
separate.
come from?
I'm sorry?
And where do they come from?
Where does
the access controls themselves?
The access controls come from?
Okay, Max wants to answer.
We're tagging in.
Answer.
I'm tagging in. So listen, we've built it. We've shown with OAuth at MySpace that security and openness aren't contradictory. We have a token system for how we issue access. So with MySpace ID, when you go to a site and you want to log in with your MySpace, a token is issued via OAuth. That token is stored in the central user privacy dashboard. So just like on Facebook, with MySpace, you have a central control panel where I can see every site I've granted access to. Those sites are never seeing my actual username and password. All they're being given is a token to access my data. And if at any point I want to revoke that access, I can do that from MySpace.
And that's the whole point of OAuth. That's the reason that the OAuth community came together, is to solve exactly that problem. It's a well-understood and well-solved problem.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that, now, would you call that an extension to OpenSocial?
No,
MySpace
OAuth
did?
is it's a different part of the stack.
Just using OAuth.
That's what FBAuth, that's what Windows Delegated Auth do, but we're doing it
And
open.
if you read the OpenSocial spec, if you go to opensocial.org, it's all there. And if you read through it, you'll see that part of the OpenSocial spec says, for authorization, use OAuth.
Okay, questions come down in the center aisle if anybody wants to ask a question.
I also just want to add one comment about the privacy point. I want to make clear to separate the technical levers that we have from the policy and habit levers that we have, because it's the equivalent of the old analog hole, right? And you know, how many of you gave out a business card sometime in the last 24 hours? Okay, and it's okay with you if the person you gave it to puts it up on the web with all your contact information. That's okay, right? Well, what technology prevented that from happening? Where's the dynamic privacy implementation around the business card? Technology helps. There are a lot of things technology can do. Technology can't keep someone who has your information from doing something wrong with it. There's nothing that technology can do there. Technology can enable us to build some things better, but it's never the end all.
It's a fair point. It's very hard to enforce social contracts.
Okay, so again, if anybody has any questions, come down the middle aisle. We've been talking about what these companies are doing to contribute. Mr. Aaron, do you have a question? What's your question? You need a microphone. He can't just yell it out.
You are a mic.
So I really thought, this is Mike Arrington from TechCrunch, and I respect everyone up on stage a lot, but I really expected you, Marc, to call out bullshit on some of the stuff that's going on. And in particular, I think that what we're seeing is Facebook has a closed platform. They're not interested in the open software stack. The reason they're not interested, from my opinion, is they want a direct tie to any of their partners, a direct software tie to those partners. That's why they broke the integration with Google, never reopened it. The privacy issue is a red herring. Microsoft has solved that issue so that through the API you can break a connection with a third party through Google. I think the truth of the matter is, and I don't blame Facebook for this, but the truth of the matter is that they don't want an open stack. Someday they may be forced into it. Their messaging is PR messaging. It's largely bullshit. I'm okay with that, but I think we should call it for what it is. They're the market leader. Their integration, hold on. Their integration is awesome. So we've integrated it on TechCrunch, and it's a tremendously cool user experience. But they just don't want an open stack, and they're not going to move towards it until they're forced to.
All right, so
and just to finish,
yeah.
The other players, and it's interesting to see Google in this position, are coming at it from a position of weakness, where Google doesn't really have a social network, other than, at least in the US and Europe. And so they're forced to take this open approach, and I don't necessarily think it's going to work. If you look, one of the first things you said was that open platforms tend to win. And Mark Zuckerberg has actually said the same thing. I don't necessarily agree with that. Windows was very successful. Office has been tremendously successful. And the iPhone is tremendously successful. And if you look at open competitors over time, I don't see many winners. It seems to be how the weaker players group together and try to compete.
All right, so let me agree with you in some aspects, but also let me, first of all, this is the first trip to Europe where I haven't had to apologize for being an American, all right? And we have a new president. And he's showing that through love and through working with people together, we can achieve good. Now, the old school Republican attitude, the old school Republican attitude was to call out Facebook for what they're doing wrong. But yet, and by the way, yesterday was the 40th anniversary of Doug Engelbart's awesome demo, right? We all owe Doug Engelbart something. We're standing on his shoulders, all right? We owe Zuckerberg and Facebook something because they showed us how to open up a platform, right? We all are contributing in our own way to being open. Now, no, we are very much still in a closed world. Does that mean that we just stick in the closed world and happy with it? Or do we try to move forward? And that's what our new president is trying to show us, is how to work together to move forward, not to continue to have these little fights, right? And that's the essence of cooperation, right? All right. So
I genuinely agree with you, but I think Obama has another set of challenges to address before.
There's a lot of different ways these companies can work together, and of course, yes, we're going to do some questions. You got the microphone? Give it to Dave McClure, please. Oh, or he's in front of you. Go for it. Question.
Hi, I'm Tom Morris. I'm from the internet. How can Microsoft be on this panel after the debacle of Office Open XML, which is neither open and barely even XML? It is not a good sign. If you want to be open and join the internet, come on out.
Okay, go. Excuses about XML? He doesn't care. All right, understand. 50,000 employees. Ray's got a little rogue group of about 200 or something. So they're not responsible for all those other guys. Dave McClure, go.
So I guess I'd like to challenge the panel to not measure the success of these platforms based on a subjective, geeky level of openness, but based on user utility and power of the user experience. Specific question is, how do you guys see providing information not just about who my friends are, but depth of connection and frequency of connection and context, so that when I, a third-party developer, am trying to use your various solutions on the web, I don't just look up 200 lists of friends, but I'm on a tennis website about teaching kids about tennis. I want to know which ones of my friends have kids or have an interest in tennis, and exposing that information. Particularly for email systems, I guess, I'd love to hear about, can you expose more information about frequency of messaging connection as a way to prioritize context and let the third-party developers take advantage of that to improve user experience, not just for geekiness' sake?
My short answer is that's a terrific idea, and we have to walk before we run. I think there's it has taken a lot of good effort by many of the people here and many others to get to the point where we can even get my email address in a secure way from Microsoft with portable contacts, from MySpace with portable contacts, from SixApart with just to get name, rank, serial number. It has taken a bunch of work. Now, there's a wonderful open spec process. If you'd like to suggest a new attribute that become adopted, there's an email address you can mail it to, get a few people to say, cool, I'm in, and now you have an attribute, and the people who, and as the app developers start using it, there will be pressure on the various providers to populate that field. That's how many of the existing attributes in the spec came, is some developer said, I can take advantage of this.
Now, obviously, the only purpose of open, as opposed to what Mr. Arrington was insinuating, is to provide better experiences to users, right? And we're at a key juncture here. We've now got enough of these companies shipping open systems that now the next step is to show benefits. No marketing technology, no technology has ever been able to be marketed unless you can show why a user cares. I personally don't think that single sign-on is enough. We need to go beyond that to not only show why open is good for users, but why also open is good for vendors. And once people can see some revenues and some real benefits to being open, then I think the floodgates will open.
A point he also hit on, too, is that persistent relationship. And so that was the point I was trying to make before, and a part of what we're trying to solve with Mesh is having that symmetrical sync. So for the user, it's happening all the time versus this one-time dump of my contacts, et cetera. So no, I couldn't agree with this point more.
Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, to follow up on your point, this isn't just about single sign-on. This isn't just about identity. This is about friends. This is about the social graph. It's enabling people to have social context anywhere and giving them the power to share, between people. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a more social web. Like, we can argue the technical details all day, but ultimately, we're all up here trying to figure out a way to work together to push the web to a point where users can just communicate with the people that they truly care about in the ways that they want to.
Yeah, and I think that a key piece of the puzzle here is MySpace showing up and saying, well, we're going to bring Guns N' Roses to the table, and we're going to bring, television to the table, and Microsoft is bringing open down the pyramid to the masses. Hundreds of millions of people will have access to these open APIs now. So the next year, moving forward, in a year from now, we will come back and we will talk about what are the benefits and what are the great solutions that this open technology can provide. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
I felt like I was about to get a question.